Like the vampires of legend, Apple hides in plain sight, biding its time until its competitors are weak, allowing them to spend billions on research and marketing, as Apple waits to later drink up the vital lessons learned by others and transform those mistakes into the lifeblood of reinvention. This is the story of its last great innovation feast. Magic Leap was founded in 2011 by Rony Abovitz. In 2014, Google led a $542 million investment round. Suddenly, the mystery-shrouded company was the focus of the tech world. Could they really deliver on the promise to create lifelike reality through a pair of glasses? In February 2016, China's Alibaba invested another $793 million. By 2017, Magic Leap had raised $2.3 billion and was valued at $6 billion. It became Silicon Valley's most talked about startup as the hype raised expectations and short demo videos teased the future. Microsoft had already unveiled the HoloLens in 2015, but the HoloLens was enterprise only. Magic Leap promised something different, a consumer-first device, a mobile headset you could use in your living room to watch movies, play games, or transform your home into a stage for digital creatures. Where HoloLens spoke to industry, Magic Leap spoke to the imagination.
So it started in my garage, and then we moved to like a warehouse strip mall thing in Hollywood, Florida. And then we intersected with Google early on. And then it was like a rocket ship ride, formally created the Delaware Corp in 2011. I was sort of scouring the world for something that could remove the monitors from the room, right? When you're doing surgery and you're working in the operative field, I was thinking, like, wouldn't it be cool if the surgeons could just see the volumetric imagery right there? Cinematic reality was an idea I had, which was the weird and cool blend of real world and amazing visual effects that you see in films like Jurassic Park, Lord of the Rings, some of the great Star Wars things were just so artfully blended. You can't tell what's a CG model, what's visual effects, just perfectly blended. I was thinking, like, wouldn't it be awesome if that could happen in the real world? And for that to be happening in the real world, it could not be a 2D overlay. You somehow needed to understand the volumetric physics of light and how the brain processes it. So thinking about that idea of cinematic reality, I realized no one had ever built anything like that ever. There wasn't even like any kind of good understanding of like, how does the brain actually process volumetric information in this way? And there was sort of a lot of really interesting work done in light field physics, like MIT holography lab and things like that. But it was about trapping the physics of a light field onto a substrate, like a kind of holographic film, but not a lot of work in like, well, how does that flow into the brain? Like, how do we actually perceive our reality? So it kind of took a lot of weird tangents of like this idea of like, how do we create this like cinematic reality we see in the movies and bring that into the world? And somehow I thought that would be super cool for that to be the future of computing, not just entertainment. I'm like, wouldn't that be amazing if computing was like that?
There is only one war that matters, the Great War, and it is here.
In 2018, I strapped on Magic Leap's headset and took it out onto the streets of Manhattan. Through the lenses, I moved from battling automatons on 2D screens and in VR to engaging them in my own home as life-size figures. The field of view was narrow, the graphics imperfect, but it felt magical. As a technology journalist, I had covered dozens of overhyped devices. Few had ever left me with the sense that the world had cracked open. Magic Leap did.
I put on a pair of these glasses and I watched a full court game right here. Not flat. LeBron was right here.
I don't think if you know what the iPhone is today, would you go back and want the Motorola brick or all the weird phones everyone went through up until you got the iPhone? I mean, now that you've had the iPhone, it's like it's everything you ever wanted out of a phone. right? Or your MacBook is probably the ultimate notebook. And when people were lugging around like 10-pound giant things with a tiny orange screen, they were dreaming one day you'd have something like a MacBook Pro. So I feel like we're in this middle period of immersive computing, and it takes a lot of guts to be a developer, to be a builder of the systems, to be a user. Just because we're in that, we're in that middle period, and everyone's trying to find the utility. But what's weird is parts of computing, like phones and tablets and laptops, are at their end stage. Like they are where they are, and we want immersive to just get there instantly, right? To just leap over everything at some accelerated innovation cycle. And I was trying to push as fast as possible, but like I think with human beings, there's a terminal velocity to how fast you can innovate. And I think there's just a certain amount of time for learning and learning cycles until we get to that, like, the promised land of the top of the mountain. But I think we're going to get there a lot faster, maybe in half the time, maybe 3 times faster than it took with like laptops or phones. But the reason I'm saying all this is like, I really do believe it's going to be the transformational thing in computing. I think we're past the early stage. We're in the middle period. And I think that frustrates some people, frustrates the press. They want to be at the end game now, and they don't have the patience anymore. Whereas like, if you look at the history of computing, the press and the users and developers had a lot more support and patience, at least I think, for the process of creating a computing industry. With XR, there's like a heightened negativity on something that's just trying to move a lot faster through what might just be normal cycles of development.
Once upon a time, Apple tried to lead early. In 1993, under CEO John Sculley, Apple released the Newton, but the market wasn't ready. When Steve Jobs returned to the company in 1997, he immediately canceled the Newton. The lesson was clear: never go first. After that lesson in the marketplace of ideas, Apple never again wavered from its strategy. As the MP3 market heated up, Apple watched patiently, waiting years until just the right moment to unleash the iPod. And when the mobile phone wars began to heat up in the early 2000s, with Japan, Finland, and the United States fighting for market share, Apple quietly developed the device that would change the entire planet: the iPhone. And despite telling the public years ago that tablet computers weren't important, Apple took over the space with the launch of the iPad in 2010. Fitness trackers were not immune to Apple's attentions. Apple came in and exploded everything by releasing the Apple Watch in 2014. Not even wireless earphones were safe. As Apple discovered, Bluetooth was the perfect complement to its mobile computing suite. And so came Apple AirPods in 2016. Getting around to Magic Leap took a little longer, but the rumors about an Apple immersive device festered for years, until finally, in 2024, Apple mirrored nearly everything Magic Leap had pioneered. From entertainment partnerships to sports and music offerings, and it did it from the powerful perch of its existing ecosystem. The difference in optical technology was significant. Instead of following Magic Leap's path with waveguides, Apple instead used pass-through video, effectively bypassing one of the trickiest and most costly aspects of immersive headsets attempting to marry augmented reality and virtual reality. Let the others pay to make the market mistakes and bear the cost of teaching consumers what technology might be next. And like a vampire's hypnotic spell, Apple convinced the world that it was inventing, not inheriting. The press forgot. Consumers forgot. Magic Leap's sacrifice was erased beneath Apple's marketing muscle. But how did it happen? How did a company with such a head start fall behind to an old industry player?
Like a lot of people, I grew up like a super Apple fanboy, Atari video games, but also sci-fi and novels and movies. So like, I would say like multiple influences, like, like George Lucas, Spielberg, Steve Jobs, Pixar, but, people like Tolkien, and, writers like Elie Wiesel and Martin Luther King and just a whole confluence of influences. And I think bringing in a humanistic approach into tech created a lot of problems for me. Like, I think it created tensions that if I didn't have them, I probably would have been more successful, made a lot more money a lot more quickly. Because I put constraints on our teams and I put constraints on how we were trying to deal with investors, all sorts of stuff that always led to tension. Because like, for example, we were very big on this idea of like data privacy. I was just like completely obsessed with the idea at Magic Leap that the only way you'd allow a device into your home, like we were creating with so many sensors, was that you had to have total control over that data pool. We actually called that concept the life stream, and this is an example of like trying to bring humanism into computing. We felt that you should own all of that. Now, that was irritating to some people who invested in us. I won't go into any names. It was like, wait a minute, there's like a treasure trove of money here. And you've architected and policied away that revenue stream. Like, have you lost your mind? Now, we bring computing and AI in from large companies that is pretending to be our friend, but is reporting back to the parent company. I won't name them. You can figure out who they are. What I wanted, what we were building to be is like, it's loyal to you. The data it's solving goes into your repository and you completely control it. And that you should have locks and controls on how you release it or not release it. Now, using that as an example, you could see how that irritates a lot of investors and their business models and how they've made money in computing for the last 20 years, because it's like, you now have the most amazing device for data collection and you don't want to make any money on that data collection. But I think it comes down to the idea that I think of people in the center, and their imagination, creativity, and like the relationships around them, and like not how to exploit them.
The original dream of Magic Leap is still alive, just without its founder at the helm. And despite modest sales of the Vision Pro, there are signs that the rest of the technology industry is, again, following Apple's lead. Meanwhile, the loud sounds of industry disruption from artificial intelligence giants has somewhat muted Apple's familiar trick of taking existing ideas and ingesting them to later emerge stronger.
I think there's immense opportunity to misuse AI. It's almost like the Doctor Strange thing in the Avengers Infinity Wars. Like, there's probably 8,000 ways to do it wrong and maybe 2 or 3 ways to get it right. And it's actually quite weird why we're building AI as a species. Like, what are we doing? And we're trying to build this like super brain that has the collective intelligence of all of humanity. And what are we doing it for? If you think about it for a while, there's a couple. First of all, I think the architecture of how AI is being built has got its own issues. So I think you can actually create an architecture which has some of the built-in safeguards. And it's going to be interesting to see, and I'm working on some of that, like which one will get adopted and why. Because I think one could be quite unstable. I think the path we're on is like, it's like building a crazy big nuclear reactor that's quite unstable. Versus like creating something that has a lot more stability and maybe ultimately more utility. So I think one, you could architect AI systems to be a lot more stable and responsive to human needs and much more in our control. I think that's one. I think the path we're on right now is building a super giant, megalith, unstable, monstrous AI that we can't control. So I don't know why we're doing that. And I think we have to think about it as like a life-saving, planet-preserving, capability, or a destructive entity. I mean, it's like the way it goes is not up to the AI, it's up to us. I think this is the time we have to lay down the right policies. You have to educate governments around it. But I do worry about the asymmetry of misuse is very, very high. And the amount of people that really want to use it in a compassionate, humanistic way seem to be outweighed by all the other crazy, just like money-making use cases. So this is a very big open question.
So what's next for Apple? As OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and others lead the AI charge, some are wondering if Apple will ever be able to catch up. They haven't been paying attention. It's quite likely that Apple is, once again, letting others pay to feed its unrelenting engine of innovation. We've been here before. Those who assume Apple is resting and hopelessly outclassed in AI should remember the lessons of the past and look over their shoulder, because someone is watching from the shadows.